Tom Harkin, and I asked him, and I know him on a first-name basis, and I talked to him. I said, Tom, tell me, I've never seen another meatpacking plant. What's your impression? He says, one of the cleaner, better run plants than I've seen in the state. He said, and Aaron, I've seen all the plants. So this is before it was popular to scream and yell, it's the jungle. And I don't know if anybody read Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. There's no comparison whatsoever. It's a tremendous, leap of exaggeration. And so, who's going to put the genie back in the bottle? The one other thing, there's one other truth. The whole time these things were all flying, the Rubashkin's attorneys were told, don't answer. Because there's no more charges, there's more things being thrown at them right and left. Their hands are tied. So, some people say, well, silence is agreement. Well, not in the United States. When you have charges on you, you can't answer. You cannot. Because you create the potential for more charges against you. I mean, you can, but there's risks, And so it was a very, very strange way of dealing with it. And the last point that anybody can ask the question is, how come there's never been another raid like this? There's never been another raid like this. And the reason there's never been another raid like this is because the federal government saw it blow up. And now, my personal opinion, a lot of this is save face. You got to convict somebody because too much money's been spent, too much has been put out in the media, too many political careers are at risk. And so you have to make a monster out of somebody out here. Otherwise, they're going to say, oops, maybe the government did a little too much. Maybe the government could have fixed instead of breaking. And we didn't have to make monsters out of people that might have made technical violations, may have had poor judgment, may have been under-skilled to deal with what they should have dealt with, but that has perspective and scale as well. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, one of the things we really argue in the book is that a lot of people from outside Postville had an agenda for Postville. And they wanted Postville to be or not be, or usually to be what they wanted it to be. And we really look at the extremes of that. One end of that spectrum, you have the kind of the politically correct, I love diversity crowd. And for them, Postville was a poster child. It was all this wonderful thing. And it proved for a while that diversity in and of itself is a wonderful thing. And of course, we later argue, well, you don't just get there by everybody coming together. It's a lot of work. The other extreme, you got people say, it can't work. Look, Jews and Christians and African, all these different cultures, it's not within the human nature to get along. These are the extremists. These are the white supremacists and the knuckleheads. Right? And everybody's got an agenda. All these other agendas in between there as well. But I will say one more thing about the immigration rate. That day they arrested 20% of the town's population. And within a month or so, or maybe a little bit more, an additional 20% of the town is gone. They're still running on fumes. It's starting to repopulate slowly but surely. But you actually lost 40% of the town's population because of the raid. And a very interesting thing happened, and we go into some detail about this in the book, and this question comes up a lot in our discussions, and that is, as other folks kind of filtered back into town to try to work those jobs, they were usually people who they had recruiting firms who were going through homeless shelters and rehab, outside of prisons, and suddenly the local Postvillians missed their illegal Guatemalans. They kept to themselves. They didn't cause any trouble. They did their jobs. They lived their lives.
Quite interesting. Yeah, if you go back to Postville now, Postville is actually technically considered to be a post-Latino town.
That's what we're
Almost all of the Latinos are gone. There are very few left there, unless they're being used maybe as witnesses or this type of thing for the Rubashkin trial, which will start about 2 more weeks in Sioux
This
Falls.
40% was illegal?
No.
The 40% were legal?
Well, it could have been a mixture of people. It was a mixture.
There were about 400 people arrested. They came in with about 700 warrants. About 400 people were arrested on the first day. They were overwhelmingly Guatemalan, Mayan Indians, not literate in their own Indian languages, nor in Spanish, nor in English. So, it gets right back to Susan's point about some of these educational issues and outreach. And there were several Russians that were arrested on that day, and a couple of Israelis, so forth. Essentially, almost all Guatemalan. But then what happened later on, then you also had the management team got arrested, which of course made it so famous. It wasn't just a regular raid. The managers also got arrested. So you had the Rubashkin, Shalom Rubashkin, the CEO, or the operating, I'm getting the right term, who ran it. But then you also had a number of people from other, even in their management team, they were quite multicultural. You wound up having local Postvillian, white Christian women getting arrested. You had Israeli, Arab getting arrested. You had some of the line supervisors that were Latino, they were getting arrested, and lots of different people from different cultures, but a lot of that management team got busted at different levels, and a number of them have already pled guilty, or they're being used probably to provide evidence against Shalom Rubashkin in the trial coming up here in a couple of weeks.
Just as a point of point.
You know, just last week there was a press release, and there was a congresswoman from Chicago who participated in inviting and basically demanding that the new owners sit down and meet with all the civic leaders of the people of Postville. And so we know already there's been a big effort from a group in Chicago to do what they see fit for Postville. I called up the congresswoman's office, and in her letter she says, why won't you meet with the civic leaders? Why won't you meet with this? Why there's many members of the people of Postville want you to be involved with this community benefit agreement. Well, I called her, and I called her office, and the speaker said, no, I'll have your assistant call back. The assistant called me back. So I said, why is she doing this? Well, we think it's good that the town meets with the different people. Does she know that they already met with the mayor, they already met with the city council, met with the Chamber of Commerce, they already met with other people in the town, and they're not interested in the community benefit agreement because they want the community benefit agreement to be a binding legal agreement. She said, well, what's wrong talking about labor? I said, why are you calling from Chicago, putting the pressure on people in Postville? You're not even involved with it. You said, you're not. And it's like the Trojan horse lives on and on and on. There's people with agendas that it doesn't quit. I can't believe it. And rather, I spoke much more gentle and diplomatic, but I got the impression that her assistant was hostile. That it's outrageous for me to consider the Chicago congressman when people are getting beaten up over there. There's tremendous beatings. I was going to ask him. I said, well, we're going to send a committee over there because we didn't have any of those beatings in Postville,
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, what's going on? It's a very shocking thing.
Well, one of the most, you talk about these issues, and a lot of people, again, mostly outsiders, were giving flack. The Iowans are just so behind. What's wrong with those dumb Postville people? Why did they let this go on in their community? Why are you hiring all those illegal aliens to work in your meatpacking plant? Well, again, national standards. You realize, of course, that this is actually the secret norm, that by and large, our food products are packed and processed by people that are not here in the country legally. This is not unique to Postville, Iowa. It happens all over the United States, and a lot of times we conveniently don't want to admit that or look at that, who's actually picking our food, processing it,
Cleaning up after floods.
packaging it, and this type of thing. So again, it brings up more of these national standards that are questionable in a lot of this industry itself.
You've been very patient. Please.
Would you go back a bit and tell about what were some of the underlying factors that brought in all these diverse groups? Why were Orthodox Jews?
What did she?
Why were Orthodox Jews? Why did they come to Postville and other groups?
Oh.
Other diverse.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the Rubashkin family were established butchers in Crown Heights. Did open up a series of
New
smaller
York area for the people don't.
Yeah, forgive me.
Yeah,
Crown Heights.
Brooklyn.
He's so Jewish now he can't. He just forgets nobody else knows.
Did the plant come first?
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, I can explain in 3 sentences. They did have a kosher packing plant on the East Coast. However, for a lot of different reasons, mostly the lack of availability of livestock, they bought an old high-grade packing plant in Postville, which had been shut down. They refurbished it. They opened it up as a kosher plant slowly but surely, built it up. And they moved, and all meatpacking plants moved to smaller towns in the Midwest for one principal reason: they get access to livestock, and they live within a culture that tolerates the livestock industry. And of course, we grow lots of cheap corn and soybeans to feed the animals that come and slaughter them in the first place. So they bought the plant, then they moved to Postville, and slowly but surely built it up as a kosher facility. And then, of course, to run a kosher plant, you have to have a lot of folks in there who do the slaughtering and do the processing and do the inspection to make sure that it's kosher, period. And then you have to have labor come in. And initially, a lot of the diverse labor actually came through those connections to New York. And those things, it was amazing. The parade of people was just absolutely astonishing. Lots of Russians, Ukrainians, we had Pakistanis there for a while. Bosnians, and so the 35 different languages that they had, that was an aggregate number over the years. Then Latinos would come in, and a lot of them first worked for the turkey plant next door, and then a lot of them migrated over to agro-processors. So But this is not unusual. I mean, ma'am,
Very
in the
common.
meatpacking, it's very common in the meatpacking industry, as Michele mentioned. Not only is Postville a post